Semicolons and colons. Let's look first at a semicolon. A semicolon can be a useful tool in your writing, but it's often used incorrectly. In order to use them, you have to make sure you have a very good understanding of sentence structure, and you also have to know what a clause is. So if you're going to use a semicolon, you're going to have to go a little bit deeper. Firstly, an independent clause is like the main idea of a sentence. It could actually be a sentence on its own. So for example, the car is blue. This is an independent clause. It's a sentence on its own. Now, what can happen in our writing is we will try to stick two independent clauses together in a sentence incorrectly, and we get something like this. The car is blue. It looks similar to the color of the sky. However, here we have two independent clauses separated by a comma. Each part of the sentence could stand on its own. Look at it. The car is blue. It looks similar to the color of the sky. There are two independent clauses, but they are really closely related, and we call this a comma splice. So this is a comma splice. The ideas of the clauses they're closely related in thought, and so as a result, we could have used a semicolon. It would look like this. The car is blue. It looks similar to the color of the sky. Now, I could also put a period here, and that would be grammatically correct. But as a matter of style, I've chosen to place the semicolon to make it really clear to the reader these two main ideas are really closely joined together. So here's another example. Susan is my best friend. She always knows just what to say. I could break this up into two sentences if I wanted to, but I've chosen, they're so closely related. As a matter of style, I've chosen to bring them together. One more example. I've been on my feet all day. I can't stand up anymore. One more example. My dad thinks I spend too much money on my car. However, I'm not so sure he's right. Even one more example. Michael moved to Canada. He liked it better than lonely Antarctica. I'm making use of these semicolons to really show these ideas are related. So in some ways, a semicolon is sort of like a period, sort of. However, it provides less separation than a period, and the two parts have to be really closely joined together. So again, it wouldn't be wrong to say, Michael moved to Canada. He liked it better than lonely Antarctica. I've used a period here instead of a semicolon. It's not wrong. However, the use of semicolon, as shown before in the earlier example up here, it provides less separation and gives you a tool to more closely link these ideas. It shouldn't be used all the time. Every sentence you write shouldn't have a semicolon in it. It's a useful tool that you can use as a bit of a stylistic piece to join two ideas that are really close together. Now, the semicolon should not be confused with the colon. The colon may look similar, but it serves a different purpose. It's the first and foremost purpose of the common purpose is that it's used to start a list. So here's my colon. I need 3 things from the store, colon, milk, juice, and tea. Okay, so I'm using it to start a list. There's my colon. Like the semicolon, the colon can also be used to join 2 independent clauses into one sentence. Different, however, is that the colon signals that the second part is going to summarize or explain the first part. It creates more separation than a semicolon. So here's an example. My students had a great idea. They would make a banner to advertise the bake sale. Notice that the second part explains the first part. It tells the reader what the good idea was. So again, with that colon, what comes after summarizes or explains the first part. Here's another example. Michael knew what he had to do. He would need to tell the truth. Here, the colon creates almost a dramatic pause. It separates the two independent clauses. It creates this dramatic pause, and the second clause explains the first, explains what Michael knew he had to do. Michael knew what he had to do. He would need to tell the truth. The colon can sometimes even be thought of as a punchline to a joke. So here's comedians use colons all the time. So here's a joke from comedian Jerry Seinfeld, and watch for the colon. He says, "When you're 5 years old and you get bored, you cannot support your body weight. I remember going to the bank with my parents, and I would lie down flat like, 'Sorry, Mom, there's nothing I can do. This place is so dull, I cannot get up.' This is what I think adulthood is. Adulthood is the ability to be totally bored and remain standing." So notice that comma, or not the comma, that colon. Notice how the colon is placed in the final sentence, in the punchline to the joke. It explains what Jerry Seinfeld thinks adulthood is. Okay? So the colon also shows the comedic pause that he places in his speech. I don't think I read it as well as Jerry Seinfeld does. When he reads it, he's not reading it, he's performing it. But you can see that the placement of that colon, you can almost hear the comedian performing when that colon is used correctly. It explains what came, the second part after the colon explains or summarizes what came before it. The colon can also be used in titles to explain what the article or book will be about. Think of this as an example title. The colon, a commonly misused punctuation mark. Or language tips, 10 ways to improve your writing. So that's another way of using a colon. You could also use it to introduce a question. I really had not put much thought into my goals. Was this something I should be thinking about more seriously? Question mark. Notice the colon there. And it's a little strange because you actually get capitalization after that colon. It's a rare example of where you will see capitalization in the middle of a sentence like that. Usually we're taught the two things that get capital letters is, the first word, the first letter of the first word of a new sentence, and names. But here, you'll see the colon and you'll get the capital after. And this is a really great way to introduce a question into your writing. You can also use a colon to introduce a quotation. It says here, many know this famous quote from Shakespeare, colon, quote, to be or not to be, that is the question. And it's got a period at the end of it there. So since the quotation is a complete sentence, it gets capitalized, even though it's coming in the middle of a sentence. So hopefully this has been helpful in allowing you to take a fresh look at colons and semicolons. They're tricky to use, but remember, really, when you're looking at anything in your writing, the best way to catch errors in your writing is to read what you wrote back to yourself out loud.